In this video, we're going to talk about servicing a battery. Namely, we're going to talk about changing a battery in a car and what the good practices are to go through so we can save ourselves some time and not damage anything in the vehicle. So we're going to change a battery on a 2009 BMW. And so we're going to go ahead and get that set up. And this is typically what it looks like. Most newer modern cars, especially German cars, are going to put a battery in a location where it's safe from weather and other elements. And so on this particular car, it is in the trunk on the passenger side, so in the right rear of the vehicle. We take this covering away and we can see the battery. And so here we see the battery. At this point, we can do some testing and decide why we might change this, right? So on this particular car, we've had some issues over time. The battery has failed to test even after being charged. And so we're going to move forward with replacing it. One of the first things that we've got to do is find a way to maintain power to the vehicle while I change the battery. This is going to help keep a lot of the memory items alive, like seat memory, radio, as well as things in the PCM or the DME in this car, like your fuel trims, trouble codes. All these different things would be lost if I disconnect the battery for long enough. So I'm going to use a jump pack and this DLC cable, and I'm going to connect that. Here I've got to get it set up and plugged in. I've got to make sure that I've got a light on at the end of that cable that tells me that the power connection, the pin 16 power connection of my DLC is good and that the fuse back there is good. All else is well. I'm going to turn my jump pack on and go forward. Next, we're going to go back to the car and we're going to start removing the bracket and hold down for the battery. So this one's got 2 bolts. I'm going to take both of those out, move the bracket out of the way. So next I'm going to move on to the ground terminal. I'm going to remove that one first. We always take the ground connection off first so that I reduce chances of arcing with my tool whenever I'm disconnecting these. So ground comes off first, get that kind of tucked out of the way, and then I'm going to move on to my positive side. This one's got a small fuse carrier on top, so I'm going to look at a couple of the different connection points. These are just ones for eyelets for parts of the different fuse block. I need to locate where the actual terminal is. So this post up here, I'm going to go ahead and loosen my 10mm bolt or nut right there to help loosen the connection. Once I get that loose, I can move this whole fuse carrier. It is kind of difficult to move out of the way, so it's got to kind of stay suspended. I'm going to go ahead and put a paper towel around the connection so that I don't cause an arc with it. Because I've got that jump pack on through the DLC, if I was to arc that positive cable, it will end up popping the fuse and we'll lose our memory. Next, I take out the bracket here. This has got a hold down with kind of a wedge system. I take that out and set it aside. Last, I'm going to unhook the vent tube. Because this is mounted in the cabin of the car, it's got a vent tube for any gases, hydrogen gases coming off the battery. With that out, I can pull the whole battery out. So here I've got my battery out. One of the things I want to do first is make sure that the battery I've spec'd for this car matches what was in it. And quick way to do that, put them together in the same orientation. I can see that dimensionally these are the same. My positive and negative posts are in the same location, and so I should be good to go. These really are the same part number, and so I don't have much issue. To prepare my battery, I'm going to have to take off some of the protective coverings. These are great on a lot of cars. I might be able to retain these. They're really just for shipping. It is also great while installing the battery in a car like this, where I've got to really maneuver it down beneath some cables. I'm going to put these back on while I put it in the car and then take them off right before I do my final install. But I'm going to leave them off for now so that I can clean up the terminals. So there's a special brush. This is my battery terminal brush. It's got basically a wire brush for an external dimension in the bottom, and then one for my internal dimensions here at the end. So I'm going to use this to clean up the lead post on both the positive and negative, and I'm going to use this at the car end to clean up my terminal connections at the car. I'm going to put this on. I'm going to rotate it clockwise. Even when I want to remove this, so I'm at the base of the terminal, I want to pull this back up, and I'm going to keep going the same direction. I don't want to reverse my direction. That generally is going to break a lot of these fibers of my brush. So always go the same direction. When it looks nice and shiny and clean, I can go to the next one. You'll notice it takes much more effort to get the positive post because it is physically larger in diameter than it does to clean the negative post. Same thing here, spin it. Bring it back up, make sure everything looks good. I'm going to go ahead and put my little covers back on, and then we'll take it back to the car. Something that we're missing with this process, because I'm just doing a battery change and that battery is in the trunk, a lot of vehicles with batteries under the hood are going to see issues over time where that battery leaks, and then there's a lot of corrosion. So like this battery I've got here had a lot of corrosion. This one actually exploded at one point because it was connected to a charger when the battery was frozen, right? And so then that created an expansion that caused the case to actually explode. But a lot of corrosion up here that happens when the seal between the terminal and the case becomes compromised, and then battery acid is able to seep up and come meet at the top here. If we see that, it's something we want to clean. So we have commercial products like a battery cleaner I can use on that. Baking soda and water is also good because I'm really interested in neutralizing the acid that's there so that it doesn't go into the cable and the copper of the cable, because that's going to create corrosion and resistance, or go down to my battery tray to the vehicle paint, maybe a wire harness, other things that acid could really eat up and destroy. Another item I want to look at before I put this in the car is that most batteries are going to have some way for me to keep track of my installation date, so that in future inspections it's easier for us to understand the date and the service life of the battery. So this one has got months. Right now we are in December, so I'm going to pick that off, just a little pick or pocket screwdriver. And then this should be my last digit of my year, and so I'm going to pick out 0 or 2020. And so this will help us in future inspections. We can glance and see that, oh, this battery is 2 years, 3 years, 5 years old, and that's going to help me with some of the decisions I make. Next, we're back to the car with our terminal brush. We're going to do both terminals, do the ground side first. Same thing as before, rotate in one direction. Just get a nice clean surface so that we've got the best connection possible when we put our battery back in. So now I'm going to fish the battery back through here, carefully set it back down in, and just start to reverse the process. So hook up the vent tube, remove my little protective cap, and you'll see one issue here. The terminal sits a little too high, it won't go down on the post. So there's a special tool, the terminal spreader tool. I'm going to use this to widen the terminal, and that's going to allow it to sit down all the way. Because the terminal is tapered, it's very important that we get it to sit down all the way to the base so that the proper connection is made and that it sits and stays. If you do not have it seated all the way, it can be likely to become loose over time. So next I'm going to put the bracket back down on the battery, get that tightened down, and refit the ground side terminal. This one also needed to be spread just a little bit to get it well seated. Last step, I'm going to reconnect my battery hold down bracket. This is a really critical step. I've got to keep this battery from experiencing a lot of vibration. Vibrations can damage the plate material within the battery and really decrease the life. So I need to put this bracket back the way that it was so that nothing can move. If I have problems where this doesn't fit, I need to revisit the type of battery I put in the car. So there, last step, we've got our interior panel back together, and we can revisit our memory saving device. I'm going to unplug the DLC, put all the trim, the little clip back on, and we're good to go.